All right, great. Hi, my name is Joan Bruno, and I am the producer, writer, and presenter for this new series of shows on the cable network. And I'm so happy to be here. Everybody's been so helpful in helping me produce these shows, and it's very much a wonderful experience so far. Right now, I think I'll introduce myself. You may know my name as the writer of a monthly column, which is called Lennox Heritage. It's to be found in Lennox Living magazine, and that's a magazine that I've been a part of ever since its inception. Practically, I think that's when I first was introduced to the publisher, who's Heather Herman, and another person who's given me an awful lot of support and encouragement. I've lived in Lennox my whole life and uh, often worked in all of the beautiful mansions here. I first went to work, one of the first places I worked was at the beautiful mansion of Bellefontaine, which is now the Canyon Ranch. And down there, I was able to explore all the basements and secret areas and the hidden treasures in the woods there. I found where the elephant from the Ringling Brothers circus is buried. That's always really fun and everything like that. I was really enjoying that job. And then I went to work in an even more beautiful mansion, which was um, uh, at I forgot the name of it. You're gonna think of this now. I worked for the famous Anne Brown, my wonderful mentor, a woman that's so well known in the Berkshires. She knew everything, and she was another big encouragement in my life. That was Anne Brown, who I worked for at Blantyre, a beautiful mansion again. And then I started to do some volunteer work as a docent at the historic mansion, Bedford Hall, another wonderful place to explore the hidden attics and the basement with the old things. So exciting. And then finally, I went to work for. I became a docent at Edith Morton's The Mount in Lennox, and that certainly is the most beautiful, in my opinion, of all of the mansions. That prompted my son to say, "Mom, will you ever work in a place that is not a mansion?" And I said, "Well, I guess not. It seems to be what I'm drawn to." So I've written an awful lot about the beautiful houses and the architecture and the Gilded Age. But right now I've been focusing on the famous people doing more autobiographical work and research. And this television series, I think, will focus on the people of Lennox, the movers and shakers of the world, sort of how Lennox really was an important town through the people. And the first show that I'm going to do is a show on Fanny Kemble, famous actress and author. A lot of people don't know that Fanny Kemble had this hidden talent. So I'm going to tell you her story, and I'm going to set up the time. Hopefully, each television show will take one half an hour. It will include my writing and my research on the history, and it will be animated with photographs, which I will download of important places in that person's life. So this is a sort of introduction to the television show, which I think I will call Jones Lennox or something along that line. I would call it Lennox Heritage, but my publisher might not like that at Lennox Living, so I'll think about it. Now, I want to tell you the story of Fanny Campbell with a bit of a twist. I would ask you to imagine Fanny as a tragic heroine in a tale long and twisted, taking her on a journey from triumph to tragedy and back again. Fanny Kemble was possibly the most romantic woman ever to have lived in Lennox. As her story unfolds, The ending is one that Fanny would have to write for herself. The actress and author Fanny Kemble first came to Lenox in 1832 when she was just 23 years old. Her father, who was also an actor, had gone into debt purchasing the Covent Garden Theatre in London. And here, at 1 minute, we will show a picture of the Covent Garden Theatre in London. And also, I know that I can get the playbill for Fanny Kemble's introduction into the world of theater, where she's playing Juliet in Romeo and Juliet. Back to the story. Desperate to save the family fortunes, he pushed Fanny onto the stage playing Juliet at the tender age of 20. She was a smash hit, and to capitalize on her fame, her father arranged an American tour. While performing in New York City, she made the acquaintance of Catherine Sedgwick, who invited her to Lenox, where she merrily joined in the sophisticated society that Catherine was the center of. And I could have started the television series with the story of Catherine Sedgwick, but this Fanny Kemble one is just so juicy, like a juicy, sexy, tragic heroine story, and Fanny just fits that perfectly. Catherine had a kind of beautiful life, wonderful story. But anyway, we should know who Catherine Sedgwick is. We are from Lenox, and but it was Catherine Sedgwick that introduced Fanny to Lenox. Now, Catherine invited Fanny to Lenox, where she merrily joined in the sophisticated society that Catherine was the center of. Fanny quickly became the toast of the town, not only in Lenox, but in other American cities as well. It seemed that in each city that she visited, she enchanted society with her wit and intelligence. Many eligible bachelors sought her hand in marriage. Fanny was a true catch. She was talented, famous, and charming. She had a unique beauty which frustrated many of the artists that tried and failed to capture the liveliness that animated all of her features. Her most determined suitor was an heir to a plantation in Georgia named Pierce Meese Butler. He wooed her diligently for 2 years before she accepted his hands. Now imagine, if you will, what a wonderful life Fanny must have been looking forward to on the day she became a bride and moved to his family's fashionable mansion in Philadelphia. But happiness in marriage was to elude her. It was shortly after her move that she found out that she had landed among the only group of people which would make a person like her unhappy. Shortly after she took her vows, Fanny realized that her husband understood the word obey to mean that she was now under his direction. This was the first of several shocking realizations which were to unfold during the course of their short and rocky marriage. Fanny, who was beloved by everyone that she had ever met, now found herself being disapproved of by the family, which she had so hopefully joined herself to. We have come to the part of the story where the young beauty has fallen deeply in love with an enigmatic and charming man. His family had deep roots in Philadelphia society and maintained a stately home there. She moves from her home into his sphere of influence. Once settled into the cold rooms of the elegant mansion, it becomes clear to the heroine that her independent thinking, her intelligence, and her talent are undervalued. She becomes isolated from her former friends and begins to find her situation intolerable. Even the joy of having two little girls only increases her misery because fear of losing them tightens the binds that keep her imprisoned in her gilded palace, controlled by societal pressures, made poor by her inability to work, and facing the scorn of the world. Her husband begins to submit her to intolerable cruelty, being unfaithful, living frivolously, squandering the family fortune. Her humiliation complete, she takes refuge in flight and settles in Lenox, Massachusetts, building a charming home for herself called the Perch. This is where our heroine's story takes an interesting turn. Fanny had retired from the stage to please her husband and his family, but was able to return to the recitation of Shakespeare as a source of funds for her new independent life. But this is not her only talent, for Fanny Kemble was a writer, and the story that she had to tell was a very important one. Fanny's friendship with Catherine Sedgwick had led to another close friendship with Catherine's sister-in-law, Elizabeth. While Fanny was enduring her life in Philadelphia and later at the plantation in Georgia, she kept up a regular correspondence with Elizabeth. She described her isolation and unhappiness in openness and detail. These letters, along with the journals that she kept, were to become the basis of her most important literary work called Journal of a Residence on a Georgia Plantation. In this book, Fanny described her life when she left the family home in Philadelphia for the plantation in Georgia. Important and horrible details about the misery of the slaves, the lives of the slaves, were exposed to her. She was the first person to reveal, through first-hand evidence, the system of concubinage, describing having met many female slaves who had tried to please the master by having many children. She recorded the shocking infant mortality rate amongst the slaves. She described the cruelty of forcing the mothers to return to work in the fields after 3 weeks of giving birth. The publication of Fanny's book hit the Free States by storm. It was read in the House of Commons in England, which may have led to British neutrality during the American Civil War. This neutrality was vital to the North's ultimate success, and indeed, I think it should be credited as having shortened the duration of that terrible war. Naturally, the Butler family stood behind the Sun throughout the unwanted publicity associated with the publication, and also through the ugly divorce which followed. But Lenox supported Fanny through the ordeal. She loved the town and its inhabitants, and they loved her. Meanwhile, back in Georgia, her husband followed up on every cruelty in his pursuit of divorce and separated Fanny from her beloved children. By law, the children, under their father's direction, had limited contact with their mother until each turned 21. When they reached that age, they freely chose to embrace Fanny as their beloved mother. Thus, her biggest remorse was made right and her happiness made complete. She moved to Europe in her later years, engaging in the literary society and treasuring time spent in the company of her daughters. And it has been said that she was still climbing the Alps well into her 70th year.